Hey everybody, Brett from AstartesGaming here, back with some more Mountain Bleed 2 Bannerlord coverage. We're going to be covering a couple of developer blogs today with a primary focus on the campaign map one that came out this Thursday. But there's been a few Q&A ones I've skipped over in between, and I didn't feel like they were really justified having their own videos. But the last one, right before the campaign map one, does cover a little bit of information that is relevant to the campaign map, and they also sort of go into further depth on it here, so I feel like in order to properly discuss it, we should probably go look at that first. But I'm going to go through all three. So the last one that we touched on was the recruitment system, and since then we've had a Q&A with an animator. Now the biggest information on this one is really just that a lot of the skeleton stuff will be available to be used or modified by modders. And so that's really the most important takeaway from this, unless you want to see some like camels walking around and people threshing wheat, is that the animation stuff will be highly moddable for people that want to, do that. Moving on, we have a Q&A with one of the, I don't know what exactly his title was, but he's one of like the scene editors essentially. So this one we're actually going to go into some depth with. In particular, blah blah blah. Let's see. So an important thing to note here is that in their battle maps, especially the multiplayer ones, they're trying to incorporate a lot of variety so that there are terrain obstacles that add to the what's the word, like the immersion and the complexity of battles. So it's not just going to be a big flat plain that cavalry can charge at people from any angle with. You might set up a charge and oops, we ran into a ditch and now we're screwed because the infantry's on top of us. You might be able to set up on like a small cliff that gives you a slight advantage. It's similar to some of the more well-made maps in Warband, but obviously much greater detail, much more realistic, that sort of thing. Moving on. We get to see a nice shot of a Sturgeon coastal city. This looks pretty cool, and the water actually looks great, although it's a bit flat for, water. Should be some ripples from wind at the very least, and if this is a coastal city, then there would likely be waves. But maybe they're still working on that. And then we get more information regarding modding. So Bannerlord's going to have a quote-unquote user-friendly scenario editor, which is great. The Warband scenario editing was not user-friendly, but obviously modders made it work. There's some fantastic mods out there that have just completely insane scene editor or scene edits. For example, if you've played like L'Aigle, which is like the Napoleonic War mod done by I think Dockham. That mod basically redid every town scene to look like an 1800s city. It looks fantastic. Now, just because modders were able to do that doesn't mean it was necessarily easy with the tools that they had. So hopefully we'll see more of that stuff because Bannerlord will have better tools and a better engine to support that type of thing. A lot of those mods that had the really insane like town scenes and stuff didn't perform particularly well when you were in them, but that wasn't always true. So let's see, what improvements have been made to randomly generated battle scenes compared to Warband? This is a really ill-informed question because there were no randomly generated battle scenes. Every single map that you played on was handmade. They were randomly chosen based on the terrain you were on, but they weren't randomly generated, and that's what they talk about here. So we don't have randomly generated battle scenes in Bannerlord. With our new engine and new map editing tools, we're much more efficient in making terrains with no settlements on them. We realized that we can have enough handmade maps for battle scenes. We designated areas on the world map with biomes and tagged our battle scenes according to their features. This helps us to have consistent quality and fun gameplay with all our battle scenes, with hand-placed spawn positions, managed distances according to party size, blah 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 blah. Okay, so let's see. What is the level design process from start to finish, and how do you create level design variety for both multiplayer and single player? I don't want to go into this too much, but essentially, let's see. Adding buildings, then walking around, getting senses of scale. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I don't think any of this is really worth discussing. So let's just go right into the world map. So the campaign map part 1. And it's worth noting, way back, I made a faction overview video, as well as a map comparison video. It's kind of an all-in-one thing. We're just looking at the Warband factions versus the Bannerlord factions, as well as the Warband map versus the Bannerlord map. It's a bit dated at this point because we've learned a lot more about the factions since then, but it is worth going back and checking out because there is a lot of information I've touched on there regarding the map, with a lot of visual aids that I don't have here in this video that might help you get an idea of the scale of it. Because it is essentially 150% roughly the size of the Warband map. Basically, they've made the world bigger, and rather than scaling down the part of the map that was the original Warband map, they've just added around it. So effectively, you still have all that there, but then there's even more map around it, and they didn't shrink stuff down to make it the same size map, just with more area covered. It's a bigger map with more area covered. And again, in that video, I kind of show you exactly how those line up. But anyways, moving on. In Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, whether you're trading goods or taking part in a military campaign, a large portion of your time will be spent traversing the campaign map. The campaign map acts as your portal to virtually every other aspect of the game, the diverse array of settlements, the huge and epic sieges, battles, trade, diplomacy, etc. In this week's blog, we would like to show you some of the work we have been doing to improve this core feature of the game. I don't know if you can call that a feature. That's just sort of like the literal core of the game. Like, you can't like a feature is, you know, interactive equipment during sieges. This is like literally the basis of your game. So what is this happening here? I would click on this, but OBS isn't going to reflect the image zoom in, so you guys won't get to see it. I'm trying to tell what the difference is, though. There's some differences. It's like two different castles. This one's along a river. This is just elevated, it looks like, over like a path, maybe? It'd be nice if there was like a caption. I'm a scientist, so any image without like an image caption, or in my case like a figure without a figure legend, really irks me. But whatever. Moving on. For Bannerlord, we're using a fantastic scene editor that our engine team created for our artists. We were, however, using a different method for the campaign map that was a relic of Warband system. This was practical in some aspects and had its advantages, but as time went on, we realized that the limitations were too many, and we decided to redo the campaign map system built on the new scene editor. So I don't know how much of the information regarding the campaign map prior to this is accurate. What we'd seen of it so far was incredibly mountainous, almost too much so. They had completely done away with the terrain sort of reflected in Warband and basically just put mountains everywhere. And the reasoning was that they wanted more choke points to force more battles. I don't know that I agree with that, but I don't know if that's still the case. So we'll see when we get another look at the campaign map, which we actually haven't seen in a very long time. It's been probably years since they've released videos that had it in there, but there were some where you got a good look at them. Anyways, there are a lot of advantages to the new design. Apart from being able to create a map that is much higher quality, it is actually a huge change that opens up a ton of possibilities. By creating the map directly in our editor, we are able to quickly and efficiently edit the map, with one of the key benefits being that we can now place settlements directly in the editor rather than with coordinates in a text file, which again, when you were making Warband mods is what you had to do there, and it was not fun. Although there were a couple of tools that helped with this, it still was a very tedious process. So it sounds like making these total overhaul mods where the map is completely different, such as like, you know, the Game of Thrones ones that have Westeros and Essos, making those and then putting all the different locations on them sounds like it'll be a much easier, still quite the undertaking, but much easier and less so than it would have been with Warband. So this leads us, this leads us on to possibly the coolest change we've made with the campaign map, the city icons on the world map now visually represent the actual cities. That is actually very cool. I didn't know that. Although, maybe we could have guessed that from what we... I guess it would be hard to, because we don't know exactly what's in there. But that is still a very cool thing, that they're not just sort of generic, you know, town icons that may... I think in Warband they reflected the culture. So the like the Nord town looked different than the Swadian town, but now we can actually see like exactly what this place looks like on the world map, and then when we go into a siege battle, we'll just get a more detailed view rather than completely guessing at what it's going to look like. So this means that given some time, seasoned players will be able to recognize a city just from its map icon alone. Likewise, players will be able to see what kind of resources a village produces and the level of a castle's walls visually represented on the campaign map. And that's actually really, really cool regarding the production, because what we've heard so far is that the economy is going to play a much bigger role in this, because the AI isn't going to cheat the same way it does in Warband, where effectively if you raid their villages it means nothing. Here, if you hit their villages, it's going to make a difference. And so now, just by looking at the map, you'll be able to tell which villages are worth hitting over others. You know, the one that's maybe, you know, producing horses might be a more strategic target than the one that's just, you know, pumping out bread or whatever. So yeah, that's very cool. Obviously it's more immersive, which is always great, but then it does add some depth to the gameplay as well, which is even better. The new system requires a bit more work in certain areas. Making city icons that match the scenes is an additional task, and we also need a separate navigation mesh so that pathfinding is fast and efficient for the many parties roaming the map. However, we think that the benefits justify the extra effort. I would agree, although I'm wondering if maybe this is why the development has gone on a little longer, is that they decided to redo all this. Because I don't know what point they decided to redo it. We'd seen the world map before. We'd actually seen it fairly early. I don't remember how many years ago the screenshots were circulating, but several years ago there were screenshots of the entire world map, and so my assumption is that that was the old one. This new one we probably haven't seen yet, because it sounds like it's still a work in progress, and so maybe that's one of the primary reasons for the delay. Anyway, finally we would excuse me. Finally, we would like to expand a little on what, oh god, these names, on what the scene editor guy that we just looked at told us in last video's blog regarding terrain types. Designating areas of the campaign map with different terrain types allows us to do more than just match battle scenes to parts of the map. It also allows us to control AI behavior, for example, limiting the areas where certain bandit parties can roam, and affect party modifiers such as movement speed. We think that modders will find these terrain types to be quite useful, as they can be used in a number of inventive ways. Yeah, they certainly can. So let's see, for example, limiting the areas where certain bandit parties can roam. So like your forest bandits in Warband that sort of stuck to that like central forest area around Dirham in Warband, versus like the desert bandits that just stuck to, you know, like Serenid territory essentially. Now, regarding mods, that would be sort of like in, we'll just stick with the example of the Game of Thrones mods. In like a Clash of Kings, in the north you have little wildling parties running around kind of harassing people, but you don't see that in the south. So that's sort of how that would be implemented in mods. And then party modifiers, so like movement speed, you would say maybe move faster in, you know, open fields, but then in like the desert or in mountains you would move slower. In Warband we saw this whenever you move through like a forested area, anywhere that there was like trees represented on the map, your party would slow down significantly. I believe if you went over certain parts of mountains it did the same thing. So yeah, we've seen this before, but it is nice to know that it's back. I mean, I would have just assumed it's back. And right, so in next week's blog they're going to be talking to a 3D artist. I really don't like the Q&As, so we probably won't do a video on that right away. It might just get shoved into another bigger video, sort of like how this one was. But that's it for today. Some good information about the campaign map, and again, another possible reason for why this is taking so long. If that is the case, I've been okay with the wait. I know there's a lot of people that are giving up on this game, saying it's never going to come out. It's going to come out. It might not come out as soon as we want. I mean, I've been wanting the game for a while. I know a lot of people have. But it's going to come out. They've invested too much, and they're self-funding this. So they've invested too much time and money for this game not to come out. They would be ruined as a company if they didn't release this game. So it will come out, just a matter of when. If the main delay has been them redoing the campaign map with these new tools, I'm all for that. The changes sound like great changes to make. While we didn't absolutely need the towns reflected accurately on the map, that's a very cool addition. And something, again, I think not only adds to the immersion, but also does have many gameplay uses. That's great. So there is that, and then of course this making it easier for modders to redo maps as well is only going to benefit us in the long run, because all of those complete overhaul mods that we've seen for Warband will be that much easier for modders to reproduce here for Bannerlord in the better engine with the better graphics and all that. So with that said, let's go ahead and end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I had a great time discussing some Bannerlord with you, as I always do, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here for my next video.